He's a man. He's pregnant with his rival's child. One chaotic night changed everything. Now they must face skeptical friends, medical mysteries, and each other. The main story is over, but in this final bonus episode, we get a glimpse into their life after marriage. My arch-rival got me pregnant. The extras. Most babies spend their first month eating and sleeping on repeat. But baby Xiao Xiao's first month? It involved eating, sleeping, and listening to English tapes. Before Julian gave birth, Zheng Qi had vetted their chosen maternity nanny, Ms. Bao Nian, and had her sign a strict confidentiality agreement. The moment the surgery was over, Zheng Qi personally brought her to their suburban home. Bao Nian wasn't much of a talker, but she was incredibly thorough. Whether caring for Xiao Xiao or preparing recovery meals for Julian, her skills were top-notch. Once Julian was discharged and both doctors had their hands free, they immediately dove into finishing their research paper. Every day, Lucas juggled childcare with writing. His laptop keys clicked non-stop, and after each paragraph, he'd read it aloud to Julian. Since too much screen time strained Julian's eyes post-surgery, he would listen with his eyes closed while they revised and polished the manuscript together. Sometimes, when Xiao Xiao had just woken up, Bao Nian would bring her over to spend time with her two dads. Julian, still in recovery, couldn't hold her for long. He'd soothe her in his arms for a while, then hand her to Lucas. The baby girl had big, curious eyes and a soft, tiny body. Lucas would play with her little hands while continuing to read out loud, but he never got far before Xiao Xiao would start dozing off, her eyelids fluttering until she finally surrendered to sleep. Julian had worried their baby might be fussy or sleepless, but so far Xiao Xiao had been nothing but cooperative when it came to nap time. After this happened a few times, Julian frowned and said, "Why does she always get sleepy when she hears English? What if she refuses to learn it in the future?" Lucas glanced down at her peacefully sleeping face and chuckled. "Then she doesn't have to. Whatever makes her happy." Julian glared at him. Lucas immediately dropped the joke and replied solemnly, "You're right. She should learn English. Not just English, German, French, Japanese, Korean, Italian, Spanish. Not a single language left out." As if sensing danger, Xiao Xiao, who had been sound asleep, suddenly jolted awake. Her big eyes snapped open in alarm. She stared at Lucas for a long moment, and then let out a deafening wail. Newborns don't produce tears right away, but that didn't stop her from crying at full volume. Every shriek tugged at Julian's heart. What's wrong with her? Julian tried to get out of bed, panicking. Does she need a diaper change? Don't move. Lucas stopped him. Stay in bed. I'll handle it. But taking care of your own child is a whole different game. Lucas, usually calm and capable, panicked the moment his daughter cried. He fumbled to lay her in the crib and reached for a fresh diaper, but her siren-like crying only got louder. In the scramble, Lucas accidentally knocked over a mountain of baby supplies from the table. Julian. Thankfully, Bao Nian had sharp ears. She abandoned the milk she was prepping and rushed in to save the day, and the mess. "Thank you, Sister Bao," Lucas murmured sheepishly as he took the now calmed baby back into his arms. "No worries. It's my job," Bao Nian replied lightly, though she sighed internally while picking things up from the floor. New parents were always like this, jumping at every little cry. She'd seen it countless times and knew it was normal. But making a newborn listen to research paper drafts daily? Well, maybe she was just out of touch with modern parenting trends. Just as Lucas was preparing to submit their finished manuscript, Zheng Qi dropped by, this time with a guest. Lucas recognized him. Professor Cao, the powerhouse behind a rapidly rising domestic medical journal. Back home, Lucas sat by Julian's bedside and relayed the situation. "Zheng Qi wants us to publish the paper in a Chinese journal. That way, we can fast-track it and avoid any Western publishers leaking the info during peer review." Also, Lucas continued, the government's been supporting Professor Qi's journal ever since they recruited him from a top-tier Western publication. They want to elevate the international standing of our domestic journals. The journal isn't as high impact as the one we plan to submit to, but it's gaining ground. Our article would boost its citation count and possibly its impact factor next year. Zheng said it's up to us. He won't interfere either way, Lucas added. I didn't give him an answer. I wanted to hear your take. Julian was quiet for a moment, then replied, You know, publishing in a lower-impact journal could affect your future career evaluations. After all, most systems still emphasize metrics like impact factor and journal rankings. I know. But we didn't write this paper to pad our resumes. We wrote it to make a statement for our country's medical field. Lucas's intent was clear. What would you choose, if it were you? He asked. Domestic, Julian replied without hesitation. I knew we were on the same page. Lucas smiled. All right, let's do it. Thanks to the journal's efficiency, the paper was published quickly. When it hit the press, China's domestic media played it cool, while the international outreach was practically shouted through a megaphone to ensure every major Western scientist, especially Ken, got the memo. Ken received the news just before bed and shot upright in disbelief. Impossible. He stormed around the room swearing, then downloaded the paper and pulled an all-nighter. He'd assumed the patient went to Albert. Never did he expect a Chinese team had performed the surgery. At first, he was sure it had to be fake. He prepared a notebook to catch any discrepancies, but the more he read, the quieter he grew. By dawn, the notebook was still blank. Ken knew the surgery was real. It matched one of his own cases, down to the smallest detail. At the paper's end, the lead surgeon had even thanked Dr. Ken for his motivation and inspiration, a gesture Ken couldn't tell was respectful or sarcastic. Probably the latter. He smoked half a pack on his red leather couch, lost in thought. He remembered this Dr. Shen, Lucas. He had asked about the procedure many times, but Ken had always brushed him off. Who would have thought someone like that could actually pull it off? Surgery wasn't like solving equations. Repeating a complex operation was no easy feat. Even Ken wouldn't have dared do it twice. And yet, this Chinese doctor had done it. No overseas education, no Western mentor, just raw skill and unshakable composure. Ken's prejudice was shaken. Albert called Lucas with congratulations. You did it, Shen. He laughed. I can't stop picturing Ken's face right now. Lucas gave a faint, emotionless chuckle. Zheng had already warned him. Western experts were dissecting every frame of video and every line of data, hunting for signs of tampering. Double standards still ran deep. Ken's paper had been praised. Lucas's was met with scrutiny, but Lucas didn't care. Like Professor Hao once said, someday, Chinese voices would carry weight in the world. Then Albert's tone turned serious. Shen, I have to be honest, you did great. But because your case so closely mirrored Ken's, the world won't see it as groundbreaking. You'll be called Dr. Study. He's Dr. Lucky, Lucas replied coolly. Is that your media script? Albert stammered. I know, Doctor. Lucky was your doing. I know you're trying to use my case to boost yourself, Lucas said, but I'm not looking for fame. I'm just glad I succeeded. Albert offered to connect him with PR teams, but Lucas declined. I'm not trying to become a celebrity doctor. 1 month later, Western critics finally gave up trying to discredit his paper. But the political attacks continued. Some issued public invitations for Lucas to present overseas, hoping to embarrass him live. Zheng helped arrange the trip. Julian insisted on going too, both to support Lucas and keep an eye out for trouble. During the 4-hour queue in a gauntlet, Lucas stood tall and answered every question unshaken. When someone finally asked, "Why don't you drink the bottled water we provided?" Lucas smiled. "Because this is warm water my partner boiled for me this morning." Julian, seated in the front row with the same style of thermos, couldn't help but laugh. At the end, a polished American executive approached Lucas with a job offer, complete with immigration, salary, and education benefits. But when he took one look at the matching rings on Lucas and Julian's fingers, he sneered. "Does your country even allow same-sex marriage?" Julian calmly replied, "Respect comes before cooperation. Without it, no offer is worth considering." He added, "Our country may still be growing, but we're willing to wait." Lucas leaned close, teasing, "Look at you, fiery little diplomat." Julian shoved a cough drop into his hand. "Take your medicine." The overseas presentation had gone smoothly. and Western skepticism gradually died down. Some media outlets even tried to contact Dr. Ken, hoping he'd publicly accuse the Chinese side of fraud. That would have given their story more weight. But Ken just scowled and said, "If y'all had a better track record with accurate foreign reporting, I wouldn't have clung to those outdated biases for so long. This is embarrassing." Fortunately, most of the mockery came from Chinese netizens. Ken couldn't read Chinese and wasn't active on social media, or else he might have gone gray from rage. No matter how it looked internationally, this surgery had lit a fire of national pride. People across China flooded social media with the news of the published paper. It felt like a holiday celebration. In contrast to Ken and Albert's media frenzy, Lucas stayed completely under the radar. Every interview he gave was arranged by Zheng Qi. Per Lucas's request, any official interview aired only his voice, not his face. Unofficial media requests? Zheng blocked them all. Zheng had initially wanted to promote Lucas a bit, but Lucas turned him down. Even the government's official press release praised the entire surgical team, rather than singling him out. The few video clips circulating online came from academic conferences where Lucas had presented, and even those were secretly filmed. Internet police acted fast, wiping those clips clean and issuing warnings to the people who uploaded them. They even shut down accounts trying to stir up gossip, scaring off would-be clout chasers. The only widely circulated image left was Lucas's ID photo from Juwa Hospital. At first, many people showed up at the hospital hoping to book an appointment with Dr. Shen, but Lucas was still on parental leave, living in a tightly guarded residence. Nobody could find him. After a few months, discussion of the surgery faded, without juicy follow-ups, drama, or media push. Even the most dashing photo couldn't hold the internet's attention. Rational voices online also reminded others not to pry into doctors' personal lives. Eventually, Dr. Shen became a nameless national hero, that handsome Chinese doctor who brought glory to the country. Like the famed airline captain years ago, his title and feat outshone his actual name. Dean Cao had once sighed in frustration, wishing Lucas would be a little less elusive. Even Zhang Cheng called to ask why he was keeping such a low profile. "Foreign media knows more about you than our own people," Zhang said. "Not many locals even know your name. I thought at least you'd get a promotion out of this." Lucas didn't hide his reasoning from Zhang, who knew the full story. Fame was a double-edged sword. What if one day, the same public that praised him turned on him? Scandals, speculations, online hate. He could take it, but he had to think about Julian and their daughter. "I submitted the paper and did the global tour to prove that Chinese doctors could perform this surgery, not to prove that I could," Lucas said. "I'm proud to be known as a Chinese doctor. That's the name I want them to remember." He wasn't chasing clout. Being a small, quiet cog in the machine felt much safer. But isn't that too big a sacrifice? Zhang asked. "After all that, you only published in a domestic journal, and barely anyone knows your name." Lucas fed their daughter while replying, "As long as Julian knows, that's enough. Besides, who sacrificed more than he did?" Zhang sighed in agreement. True. Thanks to Zheng's help, their actual leave was longer than originally planned. By the time they returned to their downtown apartment, Xiao Xiao was already 4 months old. The day they moved back, Zheng Qi invited them to a private dinner and conveyed an offer from higher-ups. Now that the hype had settled, it was time to reward those involved. If the couple had any reasonable requests, the state would accommodate them. Lucas and Julian exchanged a glance and said, "We don't want much, just one small wish." Zhang smiled. "Name it." Lucas swallowed nervously. "We want to register our daughter." They'd discussed this countless times. They figured the state would eventually help, but Zhang had never brought it up. Normally, a child gets a birth certificate within 3 days at the hospital, and then parents can register them. But Xiao Xiao wasn't born at a conventional hospital. There was no birth certificate, and without one, there could be no legal identity. She couldn't remain undocumented forever. Just as they were preparing to raise the issue with Zhang, the chance finally came. Zhang chuckled. "That's not a reward, that's our duty. But given your family's unique situation, the authorities suggest tweaking the official birth year to offset the surgery. Date in the paper. Just a precaution to avoid unnecessary speculation. We'll register her on her first birthday. As for vaccines, Continue following the real schedule at the hospital you've been going to. Everything is on file. They'll keep updating her records. However, he continued, our laws have no precedent for your case. There's no legal provision for two fathers, so the current plan is to register her as a non-marital child. The mother's field will be left blank, and for the father's name, we can only legally list one. Whoever's name we write will be her legal parent and determine her household registration. This is a serious decision. You've got half a year to think it through. No need, Lucas said immediately. Put Julian's name. Julian frowned. Lucas, you remember how you convinced me to put my name first on the paper? Lucas said, well, this is my turn. The paper carries my name, the child carries yours. It protects our privacy better. Besides, you gave birth to her. Like author order on a paper. Your contribution was the greatest. If only one name can go down, it should be yours. Zhang grinned and teased. You two could be the poster couple for civil cooperation. Even Confucius would cry over how well you share, Julian. Lucas, we used to argue a lot, you know. What changed? Maybe love, the weirdest force in the world. Thanks to his remote assignment cover story, Julian's leave lasted longer. But Lucas was soon dragged back to work by Dean Cao. Cao had been thoroughly confused by how everything had played out. Initially, both doctors were supposed to prep for surgery together. Then one day, the state told him Julian would be sent to a border region and to keep quiet about Julian's involvement in the surgery. Later, they said Lucas was heading overseas for national publicity. Now both of his star OB-GYNs were missing, and one was refusing any domestic recognition. Though the government had secretly praised Cao's leadership and even increased funding for Jiwa Hospital, fame was another matter. As one of China's top hospitals, Jiwa still needed success stories to brag about. If Julian stayed low-key, fine, that was his nature. But Lucas? He used to be outgoing. Why was he suddenly camera-shy? So when he got the green light, Cao immediately called Lucas back to work. The whole department welcomed Lucas with cheers and demanded a celebratory meal. He kept putting it off until Julian returned. Then he booked a big private dining room and invited everyone, colleagues, students, the entire OB-GYN crew. As always, everyone thoughtfully arranged seats to separate the two. Julian's students, ever dramatic, assumed Lucas was trying to one-up him. What's the big deal? One muttered, our teacher served the country too. If he hadn't gone to the border, maybe he'd have done the surgery. He turned to Yu Sang. Right, Yu? But Yu was unusually calm. No arguments today. Department unity is our shared duty. Julian's students? Zhang Cheng gave Yu a meaningful look. Yu glared back. What? Zhang grinned. Nothing. You just remind me of my younger self. Julian's students finally noticed Zhang. Dr. Zhang? Why are you sitting with us? Zhang didn't answer. Instead, he mysteriously predicted, watch, Lucas is going to sit over here. Sure enough, Julian entered first, greeted his table, and sat next to the seat Yu had saved for him. Lucas showed up soon after. His students waved him over to their table, but instead, he poured himself a drink and stood at the center of the room. He gave a heartfelt speech thanking everyone for their support during the surgery. Though the words were formal, the sincerity moved even Julian's skeptical students. Truthfully, they'd worried Lucas might let fame go to his head, but he remained humble, even scolding his students for being too cocky. Rumors had spread that Lucas might replace Director Monroe, but when he returned, his first stop was Monroe's office, with gifts and gratitude. Even Monroe privately praised Lucas for knowing when to shine and when to stay quiet. Lucas had a deeper reason for mending relationships, in case his relationship with Julian ever leaked. He didn't want enemies weaponizing it. After the applause, Li Sheng called, Dr. Shen, come eat before the food gets cold. Lucas nodded, then walked to Julian's table. Gasps echoed as he raised his glass. I want to thank Dr. Grant, he said. Without him, this paper wouldn't exist. From planning to drafting, he supported me every step of the way. Though his name isn't on it, his contribution is equal to mine. Julian, this drink's for you. Julian hadn't expected this. They'd been pretending to be distant all night. He clinked glasses, a warm look in his eyes. He'd heard whispers about why he hadn't done the surgery, but hadn't cared. Lucas, clearly, had cared deeply. Did they just make up? Zhonglan gasped. Yes, Lucas smiled. From now on, Dr. Grant and I will collaborate, learn from each other, and move forward together. Then he turned to one of Julian's students. Mind if I take your seat? Lucas's students were stunned. They watched, slack-jawed, as their teacher happily chatted with his rival. The room buzzed with curiosity. How had the two reconciled? Lucas delivered the perfect script. Dr. Grant helped me during a tough time. We realized we were better as partners than competitors. Everyone nodded in admiration. What professionalism! Only Yu Sang and Zhang Cheng had to fight the urge to roll their eyes. Yu muttered, "How can he lie so smoothly?" Zhang whispered, "I've backed him for years, but you're totally right." Then he probed, "Do you know who Dr. Shen's patient was?" "Nope," Yu replied. "They said it's confidential. We shouldn't dig." Zhang. He thought he'd finally found someone to share the secret with, only to realize he was still all alone. Back at the hospital, Julian and Lucas slipped into their usual routine, working by day, home by night. Just when life seemed to calm down, Lucas got a call from his mother. In fact, on the very day his surgery succeeded, he had called his parents and brother, telling them firmly, if any media reached out for interviews, refuse them. And for the next few months, don't contact him at all. He'd been worried they might cave in for money, even asked Zhang Qi to keep an eye on them. But perhaps the previous fallout had been so explosive, they actually listened this time. So when he got his mother's call, he didn't hang up after a few words. He asked about the family's health. What he didn't expect was her next line. "Fang Yu, your father and I have talked. No matter who he is, we're willing to accept him. If you two are open to it. Let's meet. You want to?" Lucas asked Julian. Julian was holding a rattle, making baby Shishi giggle. He glanced up. "Are we bringing the baby?" "Up to you. I haven't told them about her yet." Julian nodded. "Let's bring her." The day they met, Lucas picked his parents up from the train station while Julian waited in the private dining room with Shishi. When the Shaws arrived, Julian stood up holding Shishi and greeted the elders politely. "Mr. and Mrs. Shaw froze for a moment before turning to Lucas. "This is..." Lucas took the baby and said, "My partner, tall, refined, and elegant." Even while holding a child, Julian didn't match any of their assumptions. "I thought..." Mr. Shaw started but swallowed his words. "Don't think..." Lucas's brother Bo Han cut in quickly. "Let's all sit." "Xiaoqing, you too." Bo Han's wife, Han Xiaoqing, had been secretly glancing at Julian since she entered. Now she blinked, startled. "Oh, sure. Do I have something on my face?" Julian asked her calmly. No, I just..." She hesitated. "Did you go to high school in B City? You look exactly like a senior I admired." Bohan suddenly got it. "You mean the one who gave you all those study materials?" Han Xiaoqing nodded. She'd once fainted from low blood sugar in high school, and a senior who returned for a recruitment talk had taken her to the infirmary. A few days later, he sent her all his handwritten notes, originals, not copies, from his top-scoring year. She'd always wanted to thank him, but the letter she mailed was returned, address invalid. All she knew was that he studied at a medical university. Lucas had never heard this story before. After all, he was already away at university by then. Julian's gaze shifted. What year was she in? Mrs. Shaw answered. Han Xiaoqing nodded. "That's right." Julian looked at Lucas. "And what year were you in?" His voice was calm, but Lucas instantly picked up on the shift. Julian was upset. Julian's mind worked fast. With top scorer, Ahmed, and 1 year ahead being key clues, it wasn't hard to guess Julian's identity. If Lucas's parents hadn't figured it out and mentioned it to him, that meant they didn't even remember what year Lucas was born. Sure enough, their answers were vague, until Bohan stepped in. "Oh right, Fang Yu was 1 year ahead of Xiaoqing." "Fang Yu," Julian said coldly. squeezing Lucas's hand under the table. "Weren't there 2 top scorers that year?" "There were," Julian answered himself. "One of them was me." "The name on those notes, was it Julian Grant?" Han Xiaoqing's eyes lit up. "Yes, you're—" But she quickly went quiet. The atmosphere shifted. Julian looked at the parents again. What university did Lucas attend? Mr. Shaw, caught off guard, answered incorrectly. Julian corrected him, clearly annoyed. Then he listed Lucas's full birthday. "Can you remember that?" Lucas tugged at Julian's sleeve. Julian brushed his hand off. "Mr. and Mrs. Shaw, you owe your son an apology." Julian wasn't like Lucas. As an only child, he was direct, even blunt, with elders. And today, he wasn't holding back. The Shaws were stunned. "I'll wait 3 minutes," Julian said. "If I don't hear an apology, we're leaving." "You can't expect elders to apologize to juniors," Mr. Shaw started. "I'll apologize," Mrs. Shaw interrupted, eyes red. "Fang Yu, your mom is sorry. I wasn't a good mother. I neglected you and favored your brother. I want to make it up to you, but I don't know how." Bo Han followed. "Let's move forward. I won't act superior anymore, okay?" Even Mr. Shaw, though reluctant, muttered, "I shouldn't have told you to get out. I was wrong." Lucas remained quiet, eyes on his water glass. Then Shishi began to cry. Lucas stood. She might need a change. Once he left, Mrs. Shaw asked, "This baby?" "She's Lucas's daughter," Julian said. "Biological?" The whole table froze. From that point on, everything Julian said was a reminder. Lucas had a beautiful life, an adorable daughter, and a partner who protected and cherished him. Lucas soon returned, probably hungry or tired, he said. "We should go." "All right." He turned to his family. "Thanks for coming." The bills paid. "Fang Yu," Mrs. Shaw called out. They didn't turn back. That night, after putting Shishi to bed, Lucas lay in silence. Julian stroked his lashes. "Don't tease," Lucas said, smiling faintly. Julian didn't stop. Eventually, Lucas caught his hand and kissed him deeply. "You're pushing your luck." Later, Julian pulled out a piece of clothing, Lucas's secret hoodie with a chest cut out. "You found this?" Lucas said in disbelief. Julian glared. "Explain." Lucas chuckled. "I just wanted to see you wear it." Julian blushed. "You're shameless." Lucas leaned in, whispering indecent suggestions. "You wore it during pregnancy. Why not now?" "Shut up!" They bantered, laughed, and eventually, Lucas handed Julian a gift box. Before Julian could open it, click, a handcuff snapped onto his wrist. "Tonight, I'm the one interrogating." Later, as they lay tangled in the sheets, Lucas whispered, "My mom texted, said she's proud of me. First time in my life." "She even wants to throw a party for your success?" Julian asked. "Yeah." Lucas chuckled. "But I turned her down. She also offered to help raise our daughter. Said she owes me and wants to make it right through her." "Julian," he said quietly, "meeting you was the luckiest thing that's ever happened to me." Julian kissed his sweaty temple. "To make someone feel lucky to meet me, that's the best compliment I could ask for." Time passed. Spring came again. Shishi turned 1 and was finally getting her birth certificate. Julian told Lucas, going with Zhengqi to sort the paperwork. As he left, Lucas asked, "So we're sticking with the name? Zhang Shen? It's grown on me." Julian nodded, but at the registry office, he changed it last minute. When Lucas returned to the bedroom later, he found a yellow and green certificate on top of his clothes. He picked it up and saw the name, Jiang Mushen. Lucas stared, overwhelmed. Julian peeked in from the door. "She's got a new name." "Like it?" he added with a smirk. "Doesn't matter. You'll just have to live with it until she's old enough to protest." Jiang Mushen cooed in approval, smacking her chubby hands together. And as golden canola flowers bloomed outside their window, Julian thought, "If she's going to carry my name, then I'll be the one to declare my love, loud and clear." "Julian, look what your daughter did." A noisy day began with Lucas's collapse. He stormed from the bedroom to the study. dragging their daughter along. "If you don't deal with her soon, she's going to tear the roof off." Little Shishi stood beside Julian's desk, clutching a box of watercolor markers, lips pouting, eyes glancing nervously at her feet. "Daddy, look. I gave him a makeover. Isn't it pretty?" When teaching her to speak, Lucas had tried over and over to get her to say, "Daddy." She always looked at him blankly, until one day, Julian picked her up and coaxed softly. "Say Daddy." She said it, clear as day. To Julian, Lucas was crushed for a week, barely ate, until Julian later taught her to say Papa in Chinese. The moment she called Lucas that, his broken heart mended instantly. But as Zishi grew, she looked more and more like Julian. Aside from her eyes, which mirrored Lucas's, she was practically a softer, rounder version of Julian himself. Lucas couldn't bring himself to scold her. Whenever she cried, he felt like he was watching a baby Julian cry. And his heart melted. He admitted early on, "I can't discipline her. I just don't have it in me." Even a stern look felt like a sin. But children sense weakness. Zishi never dared mess with Julian, but she had zero fear of Lucas. Julian glanced at Lucas, whose face had been transformed into a green-browed, purple-lipped cat. He sighed. "Shishi," he said gently. "That's not how we treat Daddy." "But it's pretty," she insisted. "Makeup doesn't work like that," Julian said. "How about this? This weekend, we'll ask Auntie Zhang and Auntie Lin to teach you how to do real makeup, okay?" Zishi instantly lit up. "Okay, but first, apologize to Daddy." Zishi hesitated, then tugged at Lucas's pants and mumbled, "Sorry, Daddy." Looking down from above, Lucas couldn't help but feel like he was looking into Julian's face. The anger drained from him like water from a cracked cup. "Forget it," Lucas sighed, scooping her up. He glanced at his painted face. "Come help me wash this off. If it stains, you're in trouble." They came out to Zhonglan the day they moved into their new place. They had bought the apartment across the hall from her. Just two families on the same floor. The arrangement was cozy and convenient. Zhang had moved in earlier. Julian delayed their move to let the house air out for the baby. Before visiting, Lucas coached Shishi thoroughly. Be polite and greet the aunties nicely. But Shishi had inherited all of Lucas's charm. The moment she saw them, she beamed. "Aunties, you're so beautiful." Her Mandarin was textbook perfect. The two women were instantly smitten. Zhonglan handed her a sugar orange. As Lin Qian cuddled the girl, she asked, "Where did this little cutie come from?" Lucas scratched his nose and said, "Honestly, she's our daughter." Zhang, who had just reached for more candy, dropped the entire plate. "Your daughter? How?" "Surrogacy is illegal, you know." Lucas cleared his throat. "Not surrogacy. A few years ago I did a surgery. The patient was Julian. We've been together for years." The room went silent. Lin Qian froze mid-cuddle. Zhang stared, shocked. Wait, Senior Julian? You mean that person you used to vent about was him?" Lucas nodded calmly. "Yes." "Oh my God," Zhang gasped, clutching Lin Qian's arm. "I need support. I'm gonna faint." "I'll massage your temples," Zishi said cheerfully, reaching up with her tiny hands. "Sweetheart, that's okay," Zhang said weakly, though her head spun even harder now that Julian and Lucas's kid was literally massaging her brain. Lin Qian recovered faster. She wasn't that close to them anyway, so it didn't hit quite as hard. What a twist of fate. "Sorry for the surprise," Julian said. No, Zhang stammered. "You don't owe me an apology. I'm just totally unprepared." Later, the four adults sat on the couch in silence, while Shishi played with Lin Qian's long hair. Julian kept warning, "She's too heavy. Don't let her stay on you." But Lin waved it off. "I love other people's kids. You get the fun without the responsibility." Eventually, Zhang adjusted to the news. By then, Lin had styled Shishi's hair into a chaotic mess of tiny ponytails and taken a photo. One look at the pic, and Zixi burst into tears. Lin panicked and handed her back. "She loves looking pretty," Lucas explained, soothing her. "Don't cry. I'll fix it." Because of her vanity, both Julian and Lucas had taken a class to learn braiding. Two surgeons armed with their operating room precision mastered the art of 4-strand braids. They tied for first place in the final exam and brought home 2 giant boxes of hair accessories. Lynn watched in awe as Lucas effortlessly transformed Shishi's hair into neat, shiny braids. Julian calmly pulled a small crown from his pocket and placed it on her head. The girl's tears vanished like magic. "I never thought I'd see such a bizarrely adorable scene," Zhang muttered. "You guys are better at styling girls than I am." Soon, the 2 aunties became Shishi's favorite people. Julian and Lucas were worried they'd be a bother, but Shishi had them wrapped around her finger. Soon, it was Zhang calling to ask Shishi over. During Chinese New Year, Shishi made greeting cards. She organized them aloud. "This is for Papa, this one's for Daddy, this is for Grandpa and Grandma, and these 2 are for Auntie Lin and Auntie Zhang." Julian prompted her, "What about Uncle Tang and Uncle Zhang?" She looked guilty. "Oops, I forgot." She darted to her toy bin and pulled out 2 Barbie dolls. "These are my favorites. I'll give them to Uncle Tang and Uncle Zhang as girlfriends." Tang Ke and Zhang Cheng had long joked about their unlucky love lives. Every time they visited, they'd whine, "How are we losing to these 2 overachievers?" One time, Zhang complained again. "I just can't find a girlfriend." Shishi asked, "Uncle Zhang, what's a girlfriend?" Lucas warned, "Be careful how you explain this." "Nervous," Zhang stammered. "Someone you like who likes you back. You're each other's only one." Shishi nodded seriously. "Then I have lots of girlfriends." Tang quickly added, "You can only have one girlfriend, and the love is different." Shishi smiled sweetly. "Got it. Thanks, Uncle Tang." And with that, she gifted each of them a Barbie girlfriend. Julian watched her proudly decorated dolls and sighed, "I wonder how they'll react." As it turned out, Shishi was a lucky charm. Not long after, both men found love. Zhang met a new neighbor in the elevator, shared a few glances, and finally invited her for spicy hot pot. That neighbor became his girlfriend. Tang ran into a girl he used to like at a bookstore. Years apart, still single, holding the same book they once stayed up late discussing. Sometimes all it takes is a twist of fate, and the story writes itself. When Tong told Julian, he had tears in his eyes. Shishi, however, was furious. She scolded them for breaking the rule, only one girlfriend allowed, and refused to see them for days. Julian and Lucas had to hold an emergency meeting to explain romance and marriage. Their explanation was so complex that Shishi looked more confused. It was Julian's mom who stepped in. "It means finding someone to live your life with, like your papa and daddy. Barbies can't help with bills." Julian's parents had moved in after the baby was born, helping raise Shishi for years. They'd visited weekly, even when Julian had to move for secrecy. Eventually, their long-awaited apartment was ready. Julian's old desk was sold, and his office became Shishi's room, filled with toys and cribs. After all that, the grandparents finally moved in for good. Shishi learned a lot from them, so when Grandma explained things clearly, she understood, finally. Until she asked, "Papa, does that mean when Wang Yi said he wants me to be his girlfriend, he wants to live with me too? Julian and Lucas?" English translation. Julian always thought he'd only need to worry about boys liking his daughter once she turned 10. He also assumed the first time they'd be called into school would be in elementary school. But life had other plans. Only a few weeks into the new kindergarten semester, Madison got into a fight and the teacher called her parents in. The boy she fought with? A kid named Yize Wang. At school, it didn't matter if you were a professor or a chief physician. Everyone got scolded the same. Julian, who'd never even been lectured like this as a student, couldn't take it. He shoved the phone to Lucas. Lucas, thick-skinned as ever, cheerfully asked, "Why did Madison Grant Shaw hit Yize Wang?" Madison was standing beside the teacher when the speakerphone broadcasted that question. Tears still streaming, she sniffled and said, "Daddy, he bit me." Both Julian and Lucas's expressions changed. Luckily, the kindergarten was close to Jihua Hospital. They skipped lunch and rushed over, afraid their daughter had been hurt. What they found was a teary, unscathed Madison, and a beat-up Yize with tissue stuffed up his nose. Because they had enrolled Madison a year early and she was tall for her age, Yize stood half a head shorter next to her. "Where did he bite you?" Julian asked urgently. Madison raised her little arm, revealing a faint bite mark on her forearm, barely visible now. Julian and Lucas immediately pulled out swabs and iodine to disinfect the spot. Madison sniffled but finally stopped crying. Yi's, face swollen and nose stuffed with tissues, just sat there silently. Julian scooped Madison up and turned to the teacher. So it was Yi Zhuang who bit my daughter first. Teacher Chi looked awkward. Well, your daughter really beat him up. Girls shouldn't be that fierce, right? Lucas, packing up the medical supplies, stepped forward. Please clarify. Who started it? You are... Since Madison was usually picked up by her grandparents, the teacher wasn't too familiar with Julian and Lucas. But seeing Julian refer to Madison as my daughter, she figured he must be the dad. As for Lucas, she wasn't sure. Lucas smiled and said without blinking, "The messenger of justice." Pfft. Madison, still teary-eyed, couldn't help giggling. Realizing everyone was looking at her, she quickly lowered her head and put on a serious face again. Teacher Chi. Standing in the office with two tall men looming over her, Teacher Chi confessed, Yi's did bite Madison first, and then Madison hit him. Julian nodded. Teacher Chi, if his parents ask for medical compensation, I'll cover it. But I won't tolerate anyone bullying my daughter. If it happens again, I'll tell her to fight back. He paused. Madison won't return this afternoon. I'm taking her home to rest. Without a glance at Yi's, he carried Madison and walked out. On the way home, they bought her some treats to cheer her up. Back home, Julian finally put on his dad face. Who taught you to fight? Sun Wukong. No lying. Madison, caught, glanced sideways at Lucas and threw him under the bus. Daddy did. Lucas Shaw. Julian stood up. Is this how you teach our child? Lucas looked at the ceiling. Worked, didn't it? That brat didn't even get a hit in. Otherwise it would have been our girl who got hurt. Madison proudly struck a pose. Some kind of kung fu stance. When she saw Julian frowning, she quickly dropped it and stood still. Listen to Daddy, Julian said. Fighting is wrong. We don't solve problems with violence. Lucas opened his mouth to snark but got a glare from Julian and switched tones. Totally agree. No violence whatsoever. Daddy, Madison asked. But didn't you just tell the teacher it's okay for me to fight back? Julian. That was for show. And because the teacher tried to cover up the situation, Daddy said, and Grandma said too, I can't bully others, but I can't let people bully me. Madison reached up to smooth Julian's furrowed brow. Don't frown. Julian sighed. When she couldn't smooth it out, she scrunched up her own little face to match his frown. She already looked like Julian. Now, mimicking his expressions, she looked like a miniature version of him. He couldn't help but smile. Eventually, he gave in and pinched her cheek. Fine. Enroll her in a taekwondo class this weekend. But tell the coach to go easy. Her bones aren't like yours. He turned back to Madison. You absolutely cannot start fights. If you do, all your toys will be confiscated. Okay, Madison chirped. That incident ended with Madison joining a martial arts class. Yi's parents didn't pursue it, probably because they knew their son started it. Teacher Chi even called to apologize later that night. Just as Julian thought things had settled, he learned Yi's had told Madison he wanted to date her. Unacceptable. Julian had heard of kindergartners pretending to date, mimicking adults, and thought it was cute. Until someone came after his daughter. Lucas was even more furious. He dug out Yi's parents' number and an old feather duster that Julian's mom used to discipline him with. Julian blinked. Why did my mom bring that back from the old house? Lucas replied solemnly. Tradition. Julian gave up on Lucas and went to talk to Madison calmly. Why does Yi's want you to be his girlfriend? Madison puffed up proudly. He said I'm pretty. Julian and Lucas. Typical shallow little boy. And what did you say? I don't want to be his girlfriend. He's not cool at all. She said seriously. I want to be Sun Wukong's girlfriend. Perfect. Lucas put away the feather duster. 1, because he couldn't find Sun Wukong. And 2, even if he could, he probably couldn't win in a fight. Why Sun Wukong? Lucas asked. Because he's awesome. He fights monsters. Madison waved the feather duster like a magic staff. It was such a simple and adorable reason. Though children have wild imaginations, their honesty was often heartwarming. Julian said, "If any kid asks you to be their girlfriend again, you have to tell Daddy and me. And don't let any boy kiss or hug you." Lucas added, "If they try, punch them." Madison nodded solemnly. "Okay." Then she tilted her head and asked, "What about Sun Wukong? Can he hug me?" Julian and Lucas, "No." "Okay." Madison pouted and went to the balcony to practice her 72 transformations. Watching her tiny figure, Julian suddenly worried. What if some jerk tricks her when she grows up? Lucas put a hand on his shoulder. "We'll have Zhonglan and Lin Qian talk to her." But honestly, most boys won't measure up to her Sun Wukong standard. She'll probably ignore them. Turns out they still underestimated her obsession with that monkey. A few days later, Teacher Chi called again. This time it wasn't about a fight. The kids had been told to draw their family. Everyone else drew Mom, Dad, and themselves. Madison drew 2 split-open rocks. Teacher Chi handed Julian the drawing. "What are you teaching your daughter?" Julian took the picture home, confused, and found Madison watching Journey to the West with her grandparents. "Who told you parents are made of rocks?" he asked. Madison immediately said, "Grandma." "Julian, Mom?" Mrs. Grant blinked. She said she wished she was born from a rock like Sun Wukong. "I just played along." Clearly, grandparents have a different rulebook than parents. Julian's strict upbringing did not extend to Madison. She was thoroughly spoiled. Julian turned to Lucas. "You're explaining where babies come from tonight, or you're sleeping on the couch." "Damn." "Julian, when did you get so ruthless?" Since Madison's birth, their alone time had shrunk dramatically. She stayed awake longer now, constantly wanting to play. Exhausted from work and parenting, the 2 dads often collapsed into bed without the energy to even talk, let alone anything else. Sometimes they booked a hotel room just to get privacy like sneaky college kids. One time, Lucas forgot to return the hotel keycard. Madison found it and used it as a bed for her Barbie. Curious, she asked her grandparents what it was. Mr. and Mrs. Grant brushed it off. When Julian came home, his dad said meaningfully, "We sleep early. We're pretty deaf now, won't hear a thing. Feel free to do what you want." Julian didn't get it until Lucas mentioned the missing keycard. Julian nearly died from secondhand embarrassment. Lucas earned a permanent spot on the couch. That night, Lucas gave Madison a serious daddy talk. When Julian peeked out, he saw her clutching a pink bunny plushie, crying. "What happened to the bunny, uncle?" she asked. "He left the rabbit tribe in heartbreak," Lucas said softly. "No one ever saw him again. Why did the little bunny tell his secret?" She sobbed. "He was so nice. He didn't mean to. He was too young to know only his dad could give birth. Once the tribe found out, they saw him as a freak and shunned him." Lucas gently hugged her. "So Maddie, Daddy wants to tell you a secret too. You won't tell anyone and hurt Daddy, right?" "I won't." He wiped her tears. "You're like the little bunny. Daddy gave birth to you. Your daddy is amazing. He went through so much to bring you into this world. But your friends, like the bunny tribe, were all born from moms. So we have to protect Daddy's secret, okay?" Her eyes sparkled. "Okay." Lucas kissed her cheek. "If your teacher asks you to draw your parents again, what will you do?" "I'll draw you and Daddy." Then she corrected herself. "Wait, I'll just say I don't want to draw." "Good." Lucas smiled. Julian pushed open the door. "Time for bed. Daddy, I can sleep by myself tonight." "So sweet." She motioned for him to lean down, then planted a loud kiss on his cheek. "Thank you, Daddy." Julian was stunned. She giggled and ran off to bed. Parenting was exhausting, physically, emotionally, but even a tiny gesture from a child could melt the heart. Lucas kissed Julian's other cheek. "Thank you, babe." Julian, flustered, asked, "What story were you telling her?" "About a heroic bunny uncle who protected the tribe." Mid-sentence, Julian fell asleep. Lucas tucked him into bed, but as he tried to sneak off, Julian mumbled, "I'll wait for you." Lucas smiled. Feeling frisky? Julian hid under the blanket. Tired? Lucas teased. You. Never. He leaned in, whispering. As long as I can breathe, I'll give you everything you want. Julian, teach. Lucas chuckled, pulled him close and whispered, join me in the shower. Their clothes hit the hamper. Steam fogged up the glass, and the only sound left was water and breathless laughter. Julian gasped. Turn off the light. Nope. Lucas smiled against his ear. Why would I? It's a beautiful sight. Saturday. A medical university classroom. The free spirits trapped inside were yearning for the outside world, while being forced to listen to a lecture on some lifeless medical topic. Nothing drew more collective sighs than weekend classes, especially when the word elective was attached. Half the class had checked out. Some were cramming for major exams. Some were sneakily scrolling their phones, only half listening for potential test hints. Today, however, a few students were admiring the exceptionally good-looking instructor. A young man in a light gray designer puffer jacket lifted his phone and took a photo of the professor. His deskmate, with one earbud in, nudged him urgently. Dude, he just went over a key point. Then he saw the guy's face and froze. Terror washed over him. Dr. Shaw? Shh. Lucas held a finger to his lips and calmly locked the phone screen. Focus. The student was internally crumbling. He had just started a research project this semester under Lucas Shaw's mentorship, and now he'd just been caught red-handed by Lucas himself. Lucas hadn't expected to catch a student slacking while simply attending Julian Grant's lecture. When the bell rang, Lucas casually tossed out, "Come explain this in my office tomorrow," and strolled up to the podium. "Dr. Grant," he said, handing over a textbook with 2 amusement park tickets tucked inside. "I have a question." With a courteous professor and a respectful student, no one paid attention to what Lucas actually asked. "Dr. Grant, do you have time to celebrate our anniversary with me?" Julian glanced up from packing his things and smirked. His eyes flicked toward the book. "Very professional. Not mine," Lucas said. "It's my student's. He doesn't use it anyway." He flipped through the nearly pristine pages, then compared it to Julian's book filled with annotations. "Your copy is way more impressive." Julian handed his book over. "Take mine, then." Lucas took it and glanced around the room. "This place looks familiar, doesn't it?" Julian thought for a moment. "Not really." Lucas grinned. "I think this is the classroom where you returned my jacket." "Julian, what jacket?" He couldn't be sure if it was the same room. But Lucas's words stirred a memory. It had been winter, finals week. The exam schedule was brutal, 2 back-to-back exams with barely any time in between. Julian and Lucas were among the last students grinding away in the classroom. Julian was so exhausted his brain felt foggy. He'd splashed his face with cold water countless times to stay awake. He almost gave in and went back to the dorm, but every time he turned, he saw Lucas still scribbling furiously, full of energy. Julian's competitive streak kicked in. He stayed. Lucas chuckled softly behind him and teased, "Go sleep if you want. I won't judge." Infuriated, Julian grabbed a sheet of scrap paper and began writing. "Lucas Shaw is a jerk." He didn't finish. Sleep 1. Lucas watched Julian slump over, then grinned and packed up. He admired Julian's sleeping face and the half-written insult. Folding the paper, he muttered, "Still a jerk, huh?" Then he whispered, "I had 3 cups of coffee just to beat you tonight." Julian didn't hear. He was fast asleep. Lucas walked to the door triumphantly, then stopped. After a moment, he returned, dropped his jacket over Julian, and left. They met again 4 hours later at the medical statistics exam. Julian walked in holding the jacket. Instead of sitting, he scanned the room. Lucas, spinning a pen at his desk, noticed the jacket and smiled. "Who's he looking at?" whispered Huo Chengchun, Lucas's roommate, trying to stay calm. "Not you," muttered Li Yale behind them. "From this angle, it's clearly me." Lucas, unaware of their betrayal, joined in. "Wanna bet it's me?" Before bets could be placed, Julian marched up and tossed the jacket at Lucas. "You're not gonna wash it?" Lucas drawled. Julian slapped his student ID on the desk. Do it yourself. Lucas looked at the card. Julian's expression in the photo was just as icy as in person. He tapped the card on the desk. What if I don't give it back? How'll you eat? Julian ignored him and went to his seat. Lucas sniffed the jacket. Fresh laundry detergent. Julian had washed and dried it. Shouldn't have covered him, Lucas thought. That night, Julian barely slept. He powered through the test on pure will. No wonder he didn't remember which exam room it was. Julian scowled. You still have the nerve to bring that up? Of course. I was being kind. As they drove toward the amusement park, Julian gestured at the towering bungee tower. This is your idea of kindness? Other couples celebrated anniversaries with dinner, not Lucas. He wanted Julian to bungee jump. Julian, you really do have memory issues, Lucas said. Remember New Year's freshman year? Julian paused. Medical students rarely celebrated New Year's. Finals always loomed. That night, the classroom had emptied out. It was 11:50 p.m. Julian took a break, rubbing his temples. Not leaving? Lucas asked, walking in with hot water. You're not still studying, are you? I was about to go, Julian replied, clearly hinting Lucas was the reason he stayed. Fine, Lucas said, grabbing a pen. Let's see who cracks first. Somehow, watching Lucas settle in made Julian feel at peace. A few minutes in, Lucas suddenly said, Julian, come to the hallway. Julian thought something happened and rushed out, only to see Lucas leaning on the railing, grinning. You actually came? Julian turned to leave, but Lucas blocked him, tapping his watch. It's midnight. Then he turned to the empty sports field and shouted, Julian, Happy New Year. His voice got swallowed by the wind, but his eyes sparkled. Want to shout too? He asked. What are you doing? Julian asked. Just relaxing. I don't want to study during the first 10 minutes of the new year. Fine, Julian said. Happy New Year. Got a New Year's resolution? Julian joked. If I score higher than you, I'll go bungee jumping. Lucas laughed. Guess you'll never go. Sure enough, Julian never did. They tied again. Eventually, he forgot the whole thing. In the mountain valley, wind howled. Tethered together, they plunged from the platform. The rush of air drowned everything else out. Adrenaline pounded. They clung to each other. 19-year-old Julian would have never guessed his first bungee jump would be with the man who swore he'd never let him do it. Their shadows merged in the lake reflection as the ripples faded. The wind chilled their skin, but inside, they burned with exhilaration. In the boat, Lucas slung an arm over Julian's shoulder. Lately, I keep wondering, how did we miss so many chances to be together? They'd barely had time alone after getting together, let alone after having a child. Lucas wanted to stretch every second with Julian. Julian glanced down at Lucas's pant leg, which had ridden up to reveal black thermal underwear. That might be why, Julian deadpanned. Lucas laughed, and the boat rocked gently. If we could start over, Julian, Lucas said softly. Let's be together at 18. Yeah? The door burst open with a loud bang. A tall girl, halfway through slinging off her backpack, was struggling to unzip it while kicking off her shoes. Daddy, emergency. She shoved a test paper and a pen into Lucas Shaw's hands. The very man who had just finished stacking her birthday cake into a 3-tiered masterpiece. Quick. I need your signature. Lucas calmly balanced the final layer of the cake, glanced at the pitiful score at the top of the paper, and twitched the corner of his mouth. I am not signing this. If Julian finds out, I'll be sleeping on the couch again. Daddy, please. You're the best. Madison Grant Shaw tugged on his sleeve. If you don't sign it now, Papa will be back any minute. It's my 12th birthday today. Do you really want me to get scolded? Do you really want to ruin Papa's mood? Don't guilt trip me. Lucas refused flatly. I'm not signing. Daddy. Madison shook his arm vigorously. Just this once, please. I swear it'll be the last time. Nice try. Lucas narrowed his eyes. Madison, you still owe me for the last one. What was it again? Oh right, Arbor Day. You claimed I should protect the flowers of our nation by sparing you from Julian's wrath on such a meaningful holiday, so I signed it. And then your grandpa let it slip, and your dad gave me the silent treatment for 3 whole days. I even asked you to help smooth things over, and you refused. This time I won't tell Grandma and Grandpa, Madison promised. Lucas. And I wanted to help, she added, looking wronged. But Papa gave me so much extra homework. He said I couldn't talk to him again until I finished it. Lucas sighed. So what's your excuse going to be next time, huh? Tomb sweeping day for your failed tests memorial service? Labor Day for honoring how hard you worked for that score? You're so thoughtful, Daddy, she said, cheekily flattering him. Already helping me brainstorm reasons. Lucas poked her forehead. You're not begging for a signature. You're trying to drag me down with you, so I'll take some of the heat when it all blows up. The little fox's scheme got exposed by the older fox. She gave an awkward laugh. Well, you are better at sweet-talking Papa. Lucas sighed and, in the end, still signed Julian's name on the test. Here. Take it. Madison clutched the paper like a treasure and gave him a tight hug. Thanks, Daddy. Watching her rush off to her room, Lucas rubbed his temples, the faint sounds of her harp drifting through the door. He wasn't sure if it was due to some weird genetic mutation or just the chaos of their upbringing, but Madison hadn't inherited any of their so-called hardworking DNA. She'd made peace with herself far too early in life, and seemed cheerfully oblivious about it. Her grades weren't terrible, but far from great. Average, really. Just good enough to make her proud and Julian furious. Julian once said, "Even if I took the test in my sleep, I wouldn't get this low." Thankfully, she had one redeeming subject, English. Back in kindergarten, Madison had shown a knack for the language. At home, when Lucas and Julian wanted to keep things private, they'd switch to English. It didn't take long before she started asking, "Why didn't you take me with you last time you went out?" Lucas and Julian were stunned. They hadn't even gotten to anything inappropriate, but still, how did she understand? They chalked it up to her absorbing too much medical English during infancy. Scientific osmosis, perhaps. Julian had once hoped she'd turn out to be an academic achiever, but eventually gave up and drew a compromise. 80 points per subject was acceptable. Fall short, and she had to redo 30 similar problems per subject, under his supervision. Madison hated this. She was still in elementary school, and only had to suffer through Chinese, math, and English. But the thought of more subjects in middle school terrified her. When Julian got home, Lucas had just finished cooking. Hearing the harp, he asked, "She's playing again?" "Yeah," Lucas replied. "That harp's all she thinks about these days." She'd started learning the konghu, a rare, reconstructed Chinese harp, after visiting Lin Qian and seeing her play. The towering, intricately carved instrument and Lin Qian's graceful posture left a deep impression. Madison begged her dads to let her learn, and they eventually enrolled her in Lin Qian's lessons. At first, nobody took it seriously. Kids lose interest fast, but Madison stuck with it, and before long, Julian and Lucas bought her a harp of her own. They'd never seen a konghu before and constantly questioned if they'd bought the wrong instrument. For nearly a year, it sounded like a cotton mill in full swing. Eventually, she could play simple melodies, and both dads cried tears of relief. "Honestly," Lucas said, thinking about her test score while listening to the harp, "if she really hates studying that much, maybe we shouldn't push her so hard. She could apply to a music school. Might even be easier with such a niche instrument." Julian squinted. "Did she just have another test?" Lucas, "Absolutely not." Julian gave him a knowing look, but let it slide for the sake of her birthday. Soon, guests began to arrive. Julian's parents were first, followed by Lin Qian and Zhong Lan, who saw Lucas's feast on social media and came running. Lucas's family didn't come due to distance but had sent plenty of gifts. Lucas recalled how his mother once nervously asked where the child came from. After Julian gave the green light, Lucas told his older brother the truth. After a long silence, his brother simply said, "As long as you two are happy, we'll support you." Now the two families got along like extended relatives. Madison, however, wasn't thrilled with the gifted problem set from her uncle. She much preferred the dress from Zhong Lan and the sheet music from Lin Qian. When Tang Ke arrived, delayed by traffic with Yu Sang and Wu Rui, The house became a whirlwind of hugs and gifts. Julian had gone public with his and Lucas's relationship when he became department director. Director Monroe had to pick one successor, and despite both Julian and Lucas holding the same credentials, she used the total article impact factor as the tiebreaker. Julian won. But Lucas didn't mind. He had lost to fate, not skill. And in a quiet stairwell, he told Julian, "If you feel guilty, you can share your office with me." Julian eventually did, gave him half the space and a key. At this point, everyone pretty much knew about their relationship, even if not explicitly stated. It was obvious. They were that in sync. Only their daughter's origins were kept from most colleagues. Close friends knew, but the couple wanted Madison to grow up without excessive attention. Yu Sang almost fainted when he found out and demanded a heart checkup. Julian did it himself. Wu Rui, a bit calmer, suggested a marriage pact with his son, but Lucas shot it down. She only likes monkeys. So Wu Rui brought Madison a life-sized plush son Wukong. She loved it. Later, Madison showed off her birthday cards and gifts. Running around excitedly, Julian fixed her hair, tied it up in a bun, and placed a gold crown on her head. Her chubby cheeks had started to slim. She stood in her dress, tall and radiant, a girl on the brink of adolescence. The cake had 3 layers, symbolizing growth and the joy of their little family. When Julian tried to take a photo, Madison snatched the phone. "I'll do it." She held it high on a selfie stick, snapped the picture. Click. A room full of laughter, love, and gifts. Front and center, Madison's brilliant grin, clutching her monkey plush. Behind her, 2 doting dads with soft, proud smiles. Behind them, a circle of warm, joyful family and friends. Candles flickered in the dimmed room. Madison closed her eyes, clasped her hands, and made her wishes. The April Fool's birthday ended in genuine laughter, not tricks, not pranks, just love and dreams waiting to come true.
If this chapter moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Nova Media. Thanks for listening.